Hello everybody, and welcome to the video notes for Unit 3, Day 10. Welcome back from your Thanksgiving break. Today's video is dedicated to Brenda in 6A. Hi Brenda. Today we're going to be working with ordering rational numbers. We started to do this before the break, and now we're going to take it up another level. The objective, that's what we're going to be focusing on doing today, is to order rational numbers with fractions and explain why, or explain how. Let's do a quick review about our number line. We know that 0 is right here. And we know that as you go further to the right means greater. The numbers get bigger and more positive. So if you want, you can write bigger too. And as we go to the left, I want you to think that left is less. And the numbers become more negative. And smaller. Now let's look at our first example. Over Thanksgiving break, some students gained weight and some lost weight. Chris gained 10 pounds, Alan lost 2 1/4 pounds, and Max lost 7/4 pounds. Write and order each of the numbers in the situation from least to greatest. Let's double underline what the problem's asking us to do. So we want to write and order each of the numbers in the situation from least to greatest. Let's go back and see the numbers in our situation. Chris gained 10 pounds. Let's underline that right there. And I think to myself, if somebody gains 10 pounds, is that a plus number or a negative number? Well, that's going to be a plus number, so we know we're going to have a positive 10 here. Next, Alan lost 2 1/4 pounds. Let's underline that. If you lose something, is that a positive situation or a negative situation? Losing is negative. So my number here would be negative 2 1/4. And then last is Max also lost, so we know we're going to have a negative number, 7/4 pounds. Now what I'm going to do here is, because it's an improper fraction and I have a mixed number here, I'm going to turn my improper fraction into a mixed number. So 7/4 is the same thing as, right, you think to yourself, how many times can 4 go into 7? It can go in one whole time, and I would have a remainder of 3. So that I would have 1 whole and 3/4. So negative 7/4 for losing 7/4 pounds is the same thing as negative 1 3/4. Now to help us put these three numbers in order, we're going to put it on a number line. So let's draw a number line right here. And what I want you to do, just for now, is to go ahead and put an L on the left side for least, and a G on the right side for greatest. And the three numbers that I know I'm going to put on this number line are 10, right there, negative 2 1/4, right there, and negative 1 3/4 here. So we have positive and negative numbers, so I want to make sure I have a 0. I think it's easiest to figure out what is my greatest number first. Well, my greatest number is 10, because that's the only positive number. So 10 I'm going to put all the way out here as the greatest. And for my explanation, let's write that right here. So 10 is the greatest. 10 is the greatest because it is the only positive. And now my two negatives are negative 2 1/4 and negative 1 3/4. Now between these two numbers, if they were positive, I think to myself, which one would be bigger? 2 1/4 or 1 3/4? It would be 2 1/4 would be bigger. So if they're negative, then that means negative 2 1/4 is going to be further along the left than negative 1 3/4. So now let's go ahead and put these two numbers on the number line. Negative 2 1/4. Well, if 10 is there and negative 10 is here, right? If negative 10 is over here, negative 2 1/4 is going to be right about here, maybe. For this, we don't have to be exact. We just have to estimate. And then negative 1 3/4, that's a little closer to 0. That's going to be right about here. So I have negative 1 3/4. And so now when I list these numbers from least to greatest, I can easily look from what's furthest on the left to what's furthest on the right. So it starts here, and then it goes to the right. So those numbers are negative 2 1/4, then negative 1 3/4. Sorry, it's kind of crowded. And then 10. Those are my numbers from least to greatest. And my explanation was, well, I know that 10 is the greatest because it's the only positive number. And then I know that negative 2 1/4 is less than negative 1 3/4 because positive 2 1/4 is more than positive 1 3/4. That's why when you make them negative, when you make them the opposites, negative 2 1/4 is less than negative 1 3/4. Now that we've tried this one on our own, I want you to give this one right here a try. Draw out your number line. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4 numbers in this situation. You're going to try, list them from least to greatest, and then don't forget to explain how you did it. All right, so let's pause, try on your own. Do that now. And now you are resuming the video after you have paused and tried on your own. Let's see what we have. We have Camilla receives her scores on the most recent math test. On the first problem, she scored negative 1 1/2 points. On the second problem, she scored positive 1 1/2 points. On the third problem, she scored negative 1. On the fourth problem, she scored positive 1/4. Write and order each of the numbers in this situation from least to greatest. I know I'm working with positive and negative numbers, so I'll put a 0 right here. I like to start with the biggest number first, so I think among the positives, I have 1/4 and 1 1/2. 1 1/2 is bigger than 1/4, so I'll put that at the end here. 1/4 is my other positive number, so I know that's going to be greater than 0, but less than 1. So if 1 and 1/2 is here, maybe 1 would be here. 1/4 is going to be right about here. And now I look at my negative numbers. I have negative 1 and 1/2 and negative 1. Between negative 1 and 1/2, and between negative 1, if they were positive, 1 and 1/2 would be bigger than 1. So I know that negative 1 and 1/2 is going to be less than negative 1. So I'm going to have negative 1, which is right about here, and negative 1 and 1/2, which is just a little bit further out, which is going to be right about here. So listing these numbers from least to greatest, I have negative 1 and 1/2, negative 1, 1/4, and then 1/2. And then from my explanation, I can say something like, among the positive numbers, one and 1/2 is bigger than 1/4. And then among the negative numbers, negative 1 and 1/2 is less than negative 1, because positive 1 and 1/2 is bigger than positive 1. All right, if you got that all on your own, 3 gold stars to you. And now I think we're ready to level up. Let's take a look at example 2. You are going to do this on your own, and it's a similar process, but I want you to notice that this time it's asking you to write it from greatest to least. Not least to greatest, greatest to least. So you're going to start on the right side and list the numbers going left. All right, so you can start by drawing your number line. Okay, remember G on the right side for greatest, L on the left side for least. Okay, time to see what you can do on your own now. Challenge yourself, pause, and try this problem down here on your own. Go. And now you have tried example 2 on your own first, and you're resuming the video to check your work. Let's read it out. An eagle is flying 200 meters above sea level. So above sea level, we know that's going to be positive 200. A shark is swimming 75 meters below sea level. 75 meters below, so it's going to be minus 75. And a turtle is swimming 35 3/4 beneath the surface. So 35 3/4 beneath the surface is going to be below sea level, so that's going to be minus 35 3/4. I have positive and negative numbers, so I'm going to put a 0 right in the middle. My biggest number is my most positive number. So between this one, and this one, 200 is the only positive number. So it's going to go way out here. That's where I'm going to put 200. And then between negative 75 and negative 35 3/4, well, positive 75 is bigger than positive 35. So that means negative 75 is going to be further out to the left. So if 200 is there, 200 is here, 100 is about here, 75 is maybe here. So negative 75 and negative 35. 35 is about half of 75, so it's going to be right about here. Negative 35 3/4. So now listing the numbers from greatest to least. Greatest is furthest to the right. That's going to be 200. And then going left, it's going to be negative 35 3/4. And then going further left, I'm going to have negative 75. So my explanation for how I got here, well, I know that 200 is the greatest because it's only positive. So 200 is the greatest because it is the only positive. And then between negative 75 and negative 35 3/4, I know that negative 75 is less than negative 35 3/4 because positive 75 is greater than positive 35 3/5 or 3/4. All right, and there you have it. So now you can put your computer away, and if you have time, get an early start on your homework.
Yeah! Thank you so much for playing my game.